Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Adam Live. Ask is the acronym for Always Seek Knowledge. That's one thing I always impress on people is to seek knowledge. Seek knowledge about what you do on the daily, seek knowledge about your relationships, seek knowledge about your career. Always seek knowledge. Always strive to learn a little bit more today than you acquired yesterday and how to apply that to tomorrow. I hope that's what each one of these episodes that I provide to you on this channel. If you haven't already, I do encourage you to click like or subscribe that you don't miss any of the episodes, as I feel they're not necessarily sharing all the abundant knowledge, but it at least is getting you thinking about certain topics. And again, not all topics are for everyone, but I feel that there's one, at least one, if not more than one, for each and every one of you to apply to your life in some form or fashion. My name is Adam, and as always, these shows are live. So let's get started with today's episode. Today's episode is Emotional Intelligence, the Secret to Better Relationships. Sympathetic energy for others allows strong connections to develop. You know, it's not how smart you are, it's how emotionally available you are that transforms relationships. What I'm talking about is your EQ, not to be confused with IQ, but your EQ. What is your emotional intelligence? You know, it's the number one predictor of relationship strength, both personal and professional. See, let me share with you well, several of my careers, but I think one of them specifically was in the real estate realm in that world that provided to clients and customers. I think a unique experience. And one of, I guess, the main part of that unique experience was that I listened. And it was through listening that I presented to my clients different questions than what other agents were asking and presenting them with different situations, point of views, which also kind of shared a lot with what my experience was. And that being presented in a certain way helped them to relate a little bit to what I was going to experience on my end and what I would eventually share with them through the transaction. So if it came to me from the other agent, for example, and then I would have to present it to them to help make a decision based on that transaction. And so many times by letting a client know, hey, this is what's going to happen, this is what we can expect, uh, I think it helped. I think it helped them a little bit to not only listen to the questions I had with their ears, but also with their nervous system, and that they started to have some empathy, if you will, and understand the buyer, as well as the buyer to understand the seller and have some empathy for them. What was the reason they were selling and why negotiations just were going to be pretty hard, um, you know, because there was an emotional value, if you will, to the property. And I'm not saying that adds the cash value, but it's just like when you have that strong emotional bond to a property and then you have a buyer trying to basically negotiate you down in price, you know, when it's your family homestead, you're not going to give it up too easy. And so to have that information and to have that understanding and to maybe be slightly intuitive to know that, you know, this property has been in the family for a long time demonstrates those ties. And if you have that additional information that you can share with someone, even if it wasn't your client, doing the selling, you were representing the buyer, but just to have that innate knowledge through a small little title search to say, wow, hey, this has been in the family since the early 1900s and it's been passed on through generations. And there's kind of a bond here, so it's emotional. So you don't want to beat them up too bad, but we're certainly going to try to get you the best deal, the most effective purchase, if you will. So that being said, I promise in this episode we'll explore how emotional intelligence unlocks trust, compassion, or a deeper connection, whether in the boardrooms, relationships, or coaching sessions. What emotional intelligence actually means. Daniel Goldman's model, the key components of self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. This, with the emotional intelligence, is the sympathetic nervous system synchronization, which is what I share in the neuroencoding classes. Your psychology syncs with others when you lead with authenticity and compassion. Sympathetic energy isn't weakness, it's wisdom in motion. Again, understanding some of this information, sharing it with my clients, for instance, in the real estate field, really allowed me to be a better agent. Quite frankly, the more I did this, the more it became comfortable and the more it became habitual and the more I provided it just as a general service when many others just didn't go that deep. It was a transaction to them to bring buyer and seller together, make the commitment, and move on. That kind of wasn't what I did, and I think that's what made me uniquely different. The sympathetic energy builds strong connections. Empathy isn't saying, I know how you feel. It's offering space of, tell me how you feel. I'm here for you. I remember asking a client, and I remember asking them what they wanted to do, what they really wanted to do, not what they had to do. And what they really wanted to do was, this career. And I said, so how can you start doing that? And the advice eventually came from me, but I found that it was the silence and the presence and a little bit of, I don't know, subliminal coaching energy, I like to call it, where I was just like, come on, you can get this, you can get this, you can get this, while it was silent. And I was like, come on, bud, you got this, you got this, you got this. What is it? You know what it is. Dig deep, dig deep. And just sort of like that internal mantra that I had. Um, and eventually we got there. It was kind of exciting. And they were just like, wow, you're right. And then as we kept exploring, I'm like, so what's your next step? And we'd pause in silence and it'd be a moment and the light would come on. They're like, if I did this, and I'm like, yeah, see, and then it was like, and what's the next step? And if I did this, so it's like, we all know what we're supposed to be doing. We all know what direction we should be going into. It's just sometimes getting a little bit of a nudge. And I feel that's part of what I provide is that nudge. I don't believe that I need that nudge. Personally, I think that's my purpose here at this time in life is provide the nudge for others. You know, Science tells us that mirroring neurons helps the brain. Well, it helps us feel what others feel. So a high emotional IQ is the strong mirroring neuron activation. Remember, it's wisdom in motion. And some of this is just knowing when to do this, right? Through the practice of just creating that energy and allowing that person to exercise that energy. And then when that energy that they're creating, right, you've now stimulated that energy and you're now sympathetic to them growing and building that energy, and then it comes back. You want to mirror that back to them. You want to give them that positive, um, yes, you're right. Or sometimes, like, there was a little bit of a struggle, and at first I was kind of empathetic with uh, this particular person, and I was like, yeah, life's kind of hard. I can see where it's tough to do that, but could you be doing it? And when could you be doing it? And why should you start doing it? And it was at that moment that they began to kind of beat themselves up a little bit and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. I probably should. And then it was at that point that it's almost like they felt trust. Like, even though I'm because I mirrored with them and because they realized what they realized on their own, that they should be performing those actions and how easy it was, and the steps to perform the actions were actually things just from my quick questioning and silence that they created themselves. It honestly lowered their defenses. And each time this exchange occurred, there was just this deeper collaboration between solving the problem of, how do I start this new career? How do I do something different? How do I do this thing which I think I'm going to love doing because I always wanted to do this? You know, that there's something to be said as well, that the nurturing of a child usually is up to, or from 1 to 7, and then from 7 to about 15 is the growth. So anywhere in those two spectrums, you kind of already know what you want to do in life. It's being focused enough and disciplined enough to stay on task to do that. You know, the emotional intelligence practices, here's some daily tools that you could apply. You know, before reacting, pause. I think pause is underrated. I don't think we use pause enough in society. We're too quick to react. You know, and that's kind of this learned function, which is sort of a shame because I think pause is effective. And pause also gives time for response. So pause, then create the event or exercise or thing. Actually, let me reverse that, is that you present the thing like, hey, I think I want to do this. I think this is my career in life. It's like, okay, so you want to be this. Pause. Just let that ruminate. Just let that soak in there. And it's amazing how they will start thinking about that and ruminating about that and just taking it in and finding their solutions. It's, I don't know, was it Yoda or some wise character that said that the truth is within? And it is. You got to pause and find that. And when you get a response from someone, again, I talk to fellow mentors out there. When someone says something, just pause. Take in what they say and pause. It's also going to allow you to absorb some of that information and to make that conscious reaction. You know, another thing that creates this internal regulation, if you will, before the external reaction is what I call the 50-foot rule. And this is to spread emotional awareness within 50 feet. It's a good practice. You can try it today and continue it for many. Smile. Check the body language and just simply say hello to people. And sometimes they'll just say hi and they'll pass. But if they stop and say, "You said hi to me," they're going to be surprised. Some people will, because nobody says hi to anybody anymore. But when they stop, just say, "Yeah, how are you?" Really? I mean, sincerely. Don't. This isn't an act. But when they question, "How am I?" You want to. It's not just a question, it's an energy. That's why I say 50 feet. So you want to start at 50 feet and emit this energy out, and you will trigger the right people to come to you. And they will. Those that it doesn't resonate with, they will walk on by, might not say anything. But those that say, "Really? How am I?" Well, kind of not so good. Or, "Hey, I'm great. Thanks for asking." But I think it's that empathetic energy that you're going to emit to them to let them know that you're kind of a buddy. And then it's kind of okay that your day stunk. And you could give them some positive energy and let them know that it's just today and it won't be tomorrow. Or you could celebrate with them when they say, "Yeah, I just got that promotion. I was really worried about it." And you go, "Yes," celebrate with them. Nobody wants to celebrate alone. And it's that connection, that sharing starts to create that emotional bond, and you just absolutely never know where it's going to go. You know, the old saying about doors open, the ones that are open are for us, and those that are not the doors for us. Well, sometimes this can be an open door, and that energy you're emitting to engage with someone within that circle that creates the conversation and the emotional connection could be your next client, could be your next connection to get a leg up in your company, could be the next person who's going to tag team with you and start a business that's going to change the world. There's no end to where this can go. But for today, let's start at 50 feet. Another tool to use is the echo back technique. In conversations, repeat the emotional word someone uses. When someone says, "You're feeling overwhelmed," you agree with them and say, "Well, yeah, that makes sense. What you just said, wow, that's a lot. Who wouldn't be overwhelmed?" Simply mirroring fosters this deeper safety that's going to continue this conversation. Now, you don't want to go down this rabbit hole of allowing them to let this feeling of overwhelmed overtake them. You want to, "Oh, yeah, that's a lot to take." Well, what if you broke it up into small things, as we've talked about in other episodes? Remember the SMART method. The how do you consume an elephant one bite at a time, right? You just don't take on too much at one time. So if you are feeling overwhelmed, agree with them, mirror with them, and say, "Yes, that makes sense. I can see you're feeling overwhelmed. Have you thought about how you can change that?" That's mirroring, fostering, and empathetic. Here's the leadership and relationship payoff from utilizing of teams perform better. They conflict resolves faster. Children and partners feel safer and they feel seen by having these exchanges, this mirroring, this energy of empathy. This is how Ask Adam Live, the emotional intelligence in every layer, from coaching to stage presence, because it's the connection is what builds trust, and trust is what moves people. Remember, until you're not emotionally engaged, you're really not participating. You're just there, just kind of hanging out, just kind of getting out of the house, as they say. Emotional intelligence isn't soft, it's strategic humanity. Strong connection equals the tuned in nervous system, and empathy opens doors that strategy never could. So I leave this with you today is pause today and name some emotion before reacting. What is it that you do most often? What is your go-to emotion that you feel before doing something? Are you always feeling bad about something? Are you always feeling good? Are you feeling envious no matter what? Somebody gets a car, you're envious. Somebody gets a better job, you're envious. Somebody has more money, you're envious. What is that one emotion that you have before you actually react, before you speak and say something? Someone says, hey, I have this, and you're like, what is that emotion? What is that you have? And name that, figure out what it is, and then start to alter that emotion. Because it should always be gratitude. You should be happy for that other person. Because wouldn't you want them to be happy for you and not envious like you? Consider that. And remember to echo someone's emotional words back to them. This week, try it. When someone says something to you, echo it, repeat it back to them. And pause. If you have a story where emotional intelligence made the difference, tag at Ask Adam Live with hashtag Feel the Lead. If you've enjoyed this episode or other episodes and you just haven't subscribed, I ask you to do that today. If this episode wasn't for you, certainly share with someone you think might benefit from the topic today of emotional intelligence. If you want better relationships, stop trying to be impressive and start being emotionally available. Connection isn't built with words, it's built with your energy. This has been Ask Adam Live. Now let's all go out with our emotional intelligence finely tuned and make it a great day.